The face of an unknown teenager in the late 1880s has become one of the most recognisable and admired in all history. Nobody knew the name, age or background of the young woman whose lifeless form was pulled from the murky waters of the River Seine in the late 19th century. How she came to be in Paris and subsequently drown in the river stays forever unknown, but it sent her on an amazing path to immortality in the public eye, where she remains today. She now helps save millions of lives. Now known simply as L'Inconnue, or Unknown Woman, of the Seine, she is recorded as having been about 16 years old when she passed, and due to the lack of any indication of foul play, was assumed to have passed from her own hand. After being pulled from the River Seine, she was transported to the Paris mortuary and went on public display beside the bodies of other unknown deceased for the purpose of identification. This ghoulish parade of nameless unfortunates was a popular diversion at the time, attracting more onlookers than any shop window. However, despite the crowds, nobody recognised L'Inconnue, or at least admitted to doing so. But she did not go unnoticed. Her eerily serene smile impressed a pathologist at the morgue, who reportedly was so transfixed by her appearance he ordered a plaster cast to be made of her face. The mask quickly inspired widespread adulation and was reproduced in replicas sold in souvenir shops across Paris, then Germany, and soon the rest of Europe. The mesmerising 3D image of the unknown maiden was described by philosopher and author Albert Camus, who had his own copy on the wall, as the drowned Mona Lisa. Almost overnight, the serene beauty became a popular cultural icon. Starting in bohemian Paris, over time, L'Inconnue's enigmatic half-smile adorned mantelpieces and drawing room walls throughout the continent, as well as being used in artists' workshops as a model for drawings and paintings. Poets, playwrights, filmmakers and novelists also used the image as a kind of morbid meme for early 20th century writings, usually about a heartbroken heroine besieged by ill fortune and meeting a watery end. As the mask image became more and more fashionable, one critic touted L'Inconnue as the erotic ideal of the age, claiming her visage was the aesthetic reference point for a whole generation of young German women who modelled their looks on her. The haunting look would only be replaced by the Greta Garbo image in the 1920s. Half a century later, the powerful mask of L'Inconnue transformed into something else again, which was to positively affect millions. After the Second World War, a Norwegian toy manufacturer named Asmund Laerdal began to experiment with a new type of material which had just entered mass production: plastic. Using the soft, malleable substance, he manufactured one of his most popular toys, the Anne doll, which was acclaimed as Norwegian Toy of the Year, with open and shut eyes and natural hair. A pivotal incident occurred when one day Laerdal's 2-year-old son, Tor, nearly drowned. Luckily, his father rushed to his aid, pulling the limp boy from the water and expelling the water out of his airways. And so Laerdal was receptive when a group of anesthesiologists approached him, saying they needed a doll for demonstrating a newly developed resuscitation technique, a method known as CPR. Working with the researchers, Laerdal undertook a landmark project which was to produce a life-sized mannequin that could be used to practice life-saving techniques. It would be a challenge to make a realistic and functioning mannequin that could reliably demonstrate the physical complexities involved in cardiopulmonary resuscitation. And then there was the question of what kind of face he would give to this giant doll. This was when Laerdal recalled the haunting, enigmatic half-smile of a serene mask he had noticed hanging on the wall in his in-laws' house, the sculpted image of L'Inconnue. While keeping the name of his Anne doll, Laerdal gave the new mannequin the face of L'Inconnue, as well as a body having full-sized adult dimensions. This included a collapsible chest to enable the practice of compressions and open lips for simulating mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. Laerdal believed that it was important for the mannequin to be a female, suspecting that many men in the 1960s would be squeamish about learning CPR on a male doll's lips. The medical simulator model was given the name Resusci-Anne or Rescue Anne, and in America became known as CPR Annie. Since becoming available from 1960, Resusci-Anne has been joined by similar CPR mannequin products. But it's considered the first and still most successful patient simulator ever made, and responsible for enabling hundreds of millions of people to learn the basics of saving a life with CPR. That incredible number, earned over 60 plus years of teaching the life-giving technique, is why Resusci-Anne has been said to have the most kissed face of anyone in history. The Laerdal Company calculates that 2 million lives have been saved by CPR taught through the model. It seems ironic that most of these rescues were the logical result of people kneeling down and encountering face-to-face the replica of an unknown deceased girl from Paris, an anonymous Jane Doe, who perished long before the procedure could have ever saved her. According to medical specialists, the impact of Resusci-Anne has been enormous, her lifelike facial features helping to increase the realism of resuscitation training, giving it a memorable quality which aids recall of the technique. Over time, the resuscitation replica became famous in her own right, with the lyric "Annie, are you okay?" in the Michael Jackson song Smooth Criminal actually stemming from American CPR training. During this, students are asked to practice speaking to their unresponsive plastic patient, CPR Annie. Today there is some doubt that the flawless features of L'Inconnue's visage could have ever come from a drowned girl. Some skeptics suggest that in such a circumstance her face would have become misshapen, bloated or scarred. Despite this, some scholars do claim that it was common practice at the time to re-sculpt death masks. Some researchers theorise that the mask may have instead been fashioned from a live model posing for a professional moulder. Alternative chains of events have been offered for how the famous mask came to be. Perhaps the deceased young woman was indeed the original subject of the mask, but her features were intentionally made more aesthetically pleasing after the imprint had been taken, so as to disguise the blemishes of drowning and death. Another possibility is that L'Inconnue posed for the moulder when she was alive, then later drowned herself, which was when the mask became famous and a legend formed around it. Some simply suspect she was an artist's model and her face used to create a mask for use in drawing and copying practice. All these hypothetical scenarios have been put forward and researched, but we will probably never know the one true story. There seems to be no trace of L'Inconnue historically. Her remains are believed to have been disposed of by burial in an unmarked pauper's grave, and police records from that time make no mention of the mysterious young woman. Whoever this intriguing face once belonged to in the late 1800s, the ultimate story of L'Inconnue and Resusci-Anne leaves a powerful legacy that transcends just one person. A face that was transformed into a mask that embodied an innocence and simple beauty for generations. It also became something even greater, the literal face of a life-saving technique which prevented millions more from dying before their time. How a deceased teenager pulled from a river, or not, achieved such spectacular feats from beyond the grave is a major cause for wonder. The still calmness of her face contains an indefinable power which is magnetising, drawing us to her, compelling us to wake her up, revive her, and to try and save her. Chief Brigadier Pascal Jacquin from the Paris River Police told the BBC in 2013 that L'Inconnue looks like she's simply asleep and waiting for Prince Charming. But if the sad myth has an element of truth, it leaves a more compelling outcome, ultimately helping to save millions of lives, even after her own was cut so tragically short.